All right, Michael, this was on my mind. I thought about this when we were talking about food the other podcast.
Okay.
The food one will already
American
aired.
food?
The American food, yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned French fries.
Oh, Tom Holland.
Tommy Holland. You mentioned French fries. Nothing to do with country of origin.
Right.
Got me thinking, I bet there's a lot of different things that are just like deceptively named.
Yes.
You know? So you probably know where this is going. Do you know where German chocolate cake was first invented?
Pennsylvania?
This is a good
right?
question. I don't know if it is definitely United States of America.
Yeah. But it's like the dude's last name, right?
It's the guy. What are the Samuel German? Germans are messing everything up. It's great. This guy Samuel German, an American who owned Baker's Chocolate Company in the 1850s. I'm going to see where he was from. I think I read where was German from. I think it was from Dallas, Texas.
Oh.
But let's find out. It's Texas. I don't know if it's Dallas, but
Tejas.
There you go. Here we go. French horn, Mr. Music Guy. Do you know where this was made?
I am a music guy, and I always assumed that the French horn had something to do with France. But I'm gonna guess maybe some guy named Tommy French is the one who invented it or something.
That's great. French horn. Oh, it's called a French horn because it's similar to a type of horn the French would use for hunting, but it was actually made in Germany.
Okay.
But it was based off of a French horn, but it's not. They didn't really use the exact French horn.
Do you know how to make a trombone sound like a French horn?
Ooh, how do you?
You put your hand in the bell,
okay,
and then play a lot of wrong notes.
Oh, that one's for y'all, music lovers. That's great. A Panama hat. Do you know where these are from?
Clearly, Panama Canal, right?
Ecuador.
Ecuador. Okay.
These are great. There's a lot in here. I'm not familiar.
Caesar salad.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah.
Do you know the background?
I believe it's the last name again. Like some guy,
wow.
Made it like it has nothing to do with like Caesar or Italy or Rome. So yeah, let's fact check that. Was it Caesar's palace or like a dude's name who made the sauce? I think it was a dude's name who made the sauce, but
yeah, it was invented not even by check this out. Not even by a guy who had the last name Caesar. First name was Caesar. And it's like Caesar Cardini, an Italian-American restaurant owner in Mexico. It's not connected to Julius Caesar, not to ancient Rome. He owned a restaurant called Caesar's Palace.
Yeah, that's what I thought, Caesar's Palace.
And one busy night, his kitchen ran out of ingredients, and he improvised, creating the now famous salads. Wow. Man, so many. I'm just like, it's confusing. If you have a name, if your name, last name, or first name is a country or some other historical thing, you just should not.
Don't invent something like it. You owe it to us to not mislead us by doing that.
English muffins, made in America.
Yeah.
Boom. I mean, I can kind of see English, the connection there. Yeah. Danish pastries came from Austrian bakers. Scotch eggs, London, not Scotland. Turkish delight were first made in Persia. I could go on and on.
Turkish delight made in Persia? I thought it was made in Narnia. Sorry. Edmund.
Swiss rolls, Central Europe, not specifically Switzerland. Russian dressing, United States, once again, not Russia. Italian dressing, American creation.
So basically, all these countries are getting credit for our inventions because we're giving homage to the is it homage or homage?
That's great. I don't know what
we're giving some throwback credit to maybe what those countries reminded us of when we created it.
Here we go. Oh wow, yeah. Let's see. We touched on this last time. Buffalo wings come from Buffalo, New York. Yeah. California rolls, that actually did come from Los Angeles. That one checks out. I don't know why GPT gave me that one.
It's now giving you ones that are actually aligned with their names.
Probably. There you go. We'll just find a nice way. Food often tithed in the Old Testament.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, basically it was food, whether it was an animal or a plant. And Not the subject of our podcast today, but I was always told that the reason that Cain's sacrifice wasn't accepted was because it was plants. It was based
animals.
off, and it wasn't animals.
Yeah.
And he would have known the difference. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. But then you read the account, like,
there wasn't a whole lot.
That's not there. And then you go on to the Mosaic Law and like, oh, well, plants and fruits and stuff are part of the offering system. So podcast for another day. Maybe
that's good, because I think that is kind of like a common knowledge in quotes where it's like, of course, that's what Cain was doing.
I bet the first book of Enoch, deals with this.
I guarantee you, Clay's going to be like, in Enochian history, it was assumed that you did that. It was clearly needed to be a blood sacrifice.
Right.
Blood was important, or something like that. So this will be good. Clay is always texting. We'll talk. I will talk about this more, but I have not responded to him yet because I just forgot about it until you brought this up. And I was like, I forgot to respond to this text. But we should talk. I want to talk with Clay more about when Paul talks about transgressions in Romans. He's talking about the watchers and not Adamson, or maybe he's saying both. He's saying plus.
Yeah, it was a novel idea.
That would be where I start to get pushback. But I'm sure there's like there's some sort of basis there or something like that. But a lot of good stuff. Just a little teaser for the next time we got Clay on. Energy drinks and more Enoch. But we're talking tithing, because every day I'm like, can we do a little more Old Testament like living? I want to just like, I think next Sunday, bring your animals, bring your plants, put it in the offering plate.
Bring your animal. Well, it may not survive that process, that animal,
Yeah, that'd be a tough.
Gonna have that
Sunday
brazen altar out there and letting the blood out and stuff.
Just bring that black stove and just fire it up.
To get the the dung and the entrails and stuff, and it's a pretty messy process.
Oh man. Well, let's go ahead and take it to the next level. From the heart of the Low Country in South Carolina,
it's the Take Two podcast, where we take theology to the next level. All right, so tithes in the Old Testament. Now, when you grew up in church, did people talk about you giving your tithe?
Oh yeah, tithes and offerings, baby. We're praying about our tithes, and that always goes together. Did you tithe? Yeah, people be like, hey, let's talk about tithing. Like, maybe there's a sermon on tithing. It was definitely common vernacular.
Now, in the church, did they have Galileans where you grew up? They probably didn't, because y'all had Awana, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we had Galileans.
I don't
know if that's a BMA thing, because were you Southern Baptist or
We were not Southern Baptist. No, we were, Independent Baptist.
We were BMA, Baptist Missionary Association.
Okay.
And we had Galileans and GMAs. GMAs, I don't know what GMA stands for. Ask Jill or Jill's mom. But GMAs was for the ladies. Galileans was for the guys. And we had scripture memory, and the very first verse that we memorized was that Malachi verse that talked about, open up the storehouse and,
Now, that's a way to start your program. The first one, hey, give here. That just coincidentally happens to be Take Two's theme verse. So if you want to give to Take Two, buy stuff from our store. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and looking back, I'm like, why in the world, like, of all the verses that you'd want to start guys memorizing from Scripture, like, this is important, give the tithe. But we're going to be talking about the Old Testament tithe, what it was, and then, kind of how it computed under the Mosaic Law.
Okay.
I think that's important. But we see hints of it before then, like Abraham gave all of his 10th to Melchizedek. So there are some hints of that before. But a tithe literally just translates to 10%.
Checks out. And because that's like the go-to, like if someone's talking about tithing in today's world, they're like, hey, give 10%. Or that's like, they're not saying you have to be, but that's just what clicks.
It was good enough for the Israelites, so it should be good enough for us, right?
Yeah.
So there's actually 3 different tithes.
I don't like where you're going with this.
in the Old Testament. The first one was the Levitical tithe. And if you've ever read through the Torah or the Pentateuch or the Law, or the first 5 books of the Bible.
Boom.
I'm sure there's some other name for them.
We could go on and on, but we're going to stop right there. We have a ton more lined up, yeah.
Then you've seen these laws given, and it seems like, you get a little bit in Exodus, and then there's obviously more in Leviticus, and you think, okay, we're done with it. Go on to Numbers, and then it starts shows up again, and then Deuteronomy, you're like, I'm getting it for the second time. So these are kind of, gleaned from across those.
It is pretty amazing how probably ill-equipped, I'm speaking of myself here too, how much I don't compute with some of this stuff just because it's such a different culture, but it's like so repetitive, and I've read it 100 times, 1,000,000 times, and you're just like, man, it just, I was telling Mike before we aired, be great just to have he should like just do an object lesson of all these Levitical offerings, because I think it's just so hard to
conceptualize
and just think about it in your day-to-day life, like how you would do this, what the workflow would be.
No, I think that's good. So here are 2 verses that reference this, what we'll call the Levitical tithe. The Levitical tithe was given to support the tribe of Levi. They didn't have a land inheritance. They didn't get to say this land is ours for forever, and they were dispersed. So they weren't like all the Danites were here, and all the Judahites were down in the south, and so they were scattered across Israel, and so the means of providing for them was through this tithe. So Leviticus 27:30 says, "Thus all the tithe of the land, of the seed of the land, or of the fruit of the tree is the Lord's, it is holy to the Lord." Another reference, Numbers 18:21. "To the sons of Levi, behold, I have given all the tithe in Israel for an inheritance in return for their service, which they performed, the service of the tent of meeting." And so this talks about the tithe being from the land, and we interpret that to be the flocks and the herds.
Yeah, that's good, because if you were these other tribes, you have a little bit easier way of having a means, and if you wanted to be like, hey, I sell my land to someone else. Levi's a little bit harder to do some of that. That's where they're kind of dependent on that giving.
So it's 10% of the produce. So that would be your fruits, your vegetables, your wheat. When Jesus was addressing the Pharisees, he says, you tithe a tenth of your dill and cumin and something else. I think he listed 3 of them.
Yeah, I was about to make up like somewhat modern herb, but it's not coming to me.
Parsley, or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, but you missed these other things. Like you should have done that.
Yeah,
plus,
if you were, yep, that's right.
Plus these other things. So, we kind of look askance at them like, oh, you're picking leaves off of your herbs. But Jesus is like, no, that's within reason. Because if you're harvesting your herbs, a tenth of that goes to this
all
tithe.
of it. That's great. So that's number one. If you are a political, if you're going to run for office, you might not want to use this platform because you might not get a lot of people. Because we're not just saying, hey, there's tithe number 1. We got tithe number 2, the festival tithe, or also could be rejoicing tithe. And guess what? That's going to cost you another 10%. This was specifically consumed by the Israelites themselves when they would have these different religious festivals in Jerusalem.
Yeah, so it's almost like, hey, you're going to have a festival that's going to be a Feast of Booths, or probably Feast of Booths probably was not around at this point in time yet, but whatever those festivals were that were around, it's almost like forced savings so that they could enjoy
do
this.
Yeah, that's kind of smart, where it's like it's paying for what they're doing. Deuteronomy 14, 22, and 23 says, "You shall surely tithe all the produce from what you sow, which comes out of the field every year. You shall eat in the presence of the Lord your God in the place where he chooses to establish his name." Deuteronomy 14, a few verses later, verse 26 says, "You may spend the money for whatever your heart desires, for oxen or sheep or wine or strong drink." Whoa, John MacArthur, has he read that one? "And there you shall eat in the presence of the Lord your God and rejoice." So giving a little bit of leeway here, but it's like reserved for this particular time.
Yeah, so you took a tenth of your stuff. I think you probably, I'm assuming what happened is like you take your tenth, I take my tenth. We all put our tenths together, and then we have a festival out of it. Or you could sell it if you needed to travel someplace. Okay, like there was some to celebrate. But and so there was a little bit of leeway.
And if it was celebration, I mean, you could read it here: oxen, sheep, wine. It's like you were putting forth a decent amount. You know, when you add it all together, it'd be so interesting to like just observe one of these festivals like from ancient Israel, just to see all of this. Because I think even we get into the offerings, and it's like we have some information, but we don't really know everything exactly, right? So it's hard to like make some assumptions,
Yeah, and these were annual, so I don't know if like one time out of the year, like if you had 100 sheep, 10 of them are going.
That's interesting.
How they did that. I think crops is probably easier because we'll talk about first fruits, but first fruits were an offering, and then you had to give a tenth of the total. How did that work? Like if let's say you had 100 bananas that you were I want to give something discrete, or 100 offers of barley or something like that. And then like, does the first one go, and then you owe 9 more because the total
for every it's so interesting.
We don't know exactly how they counted it out,
but there's only 2 tithes. We're done.
No. So the first 2 are annual tithes. This other one is every 3rd year.
Yeah, you need an accountant to keep up with all of these things, because it gets a little bit tricky.
So this would be like year 3 and year 6. You would give a second tenth of all of your agricultural increase, and that would be stored for the needy people. So Deuteronomy 14:28 through 29. It's in the same general area. At the end of every 3rd year, you shall bring out all the tithe of your produce in that year. The Levite, the alien, the orphan, and the widow may come and eat and be satisfied. So now we have those who are in need can do that. A little later on, 26:21. When you finish paying all the tithe of your increase in the 3rd year, the year of tithing. So it also talks about this being there as far as a timing event. So 10% stored, kind of a treasury for those who are in need.
Yeah, that's kind of the built-in system here. So you got your Levitical tithe, 10% every year. Festival or rejoicing tithe, 10% every year. And then this for the needy, this for the poor tithe, 10%, but every 3rd year. So if you're like trying to, break it down a little bit, effectively 23.33%, maybe it's like 20%, then every 3rd year, 30%, but you kind of break it down. Yeah.
And this, that percentage that you just mentioned, is explicit to, I shouldn't say explicit, but it is for the first 6 years.
Yeah. Okay. That's right. Yeah.
The 7th year, which isn't in this first calculation, but I get it later on. The 7th year is the Sabbath year.
Okay. Yep.
And so you're not growing anything. And I think you're just supposed to kind of what happens to your sheep? They're still mating and having.
Stop that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah.
But anyways, it was a year of rest. So since it was a year of rest, you also didn't do those annual tithes that year. So that it was on a 7-year cycle. So years 1 through 6.
Less. Yeah.
So it would be that 23% would be distributed.
Yeah.
But you're also supposed to be living off of
some of that.
Like, so you were supposed to have saved up enough over those first 6 years. And specifically that 6th year, you're supposed to have so much that you're able to save and get through the 7th year. So,
Great. Hope you were paying attention, because we're starting the offerings, and you got instead of 3, you got to expand your mind a little bit and think through some of these other
So how many total do we have? I think there's like 9 different offerings. We'll try to hit these rather quickly, but
that's smart.
Burnt offering. This was for atonement and complete consecration to God. The passage is Leviticus 1:3 through 4, and basically just talks about bringing a burnt offering to the Lord, and the priest is going to lay his hand on it, and this was something that would be done regularly.
Great. Offering number 2, a grain offering. An offering of the work of one's hands, expressing devotion and dedication of labor. Leviticus 1 was the burnt offering. Leviticus 2, so Leviticus is just laying out these offerings back to back, and is saying, when anyone presents a grain offering to the Lord, using fine flour, pouring that oil on it, frankincense on it, bring it to Aaron's sons, and he'll take a handful of this flour with the oil and the frankincense and offer it up in smoke as a memorial portion on the altar by fire, and it's a soothing aroma. You might hear that, in other parts of Scripture as well.
I'm guessing that's what it was the barbecue smell or like the grilling out smell. Soothing aroma. Number 3 was a peace offering. And this was a celebration of peace and thanksgiving or fulfillment of a vow. And it had in mind this idea of like, we're going to give an offering in honor of fellowship and thanksgiving. Leviticus 1, Leviticus 2. Now we're in Leviticus 3 for this one. And so, the high priest would take the offering of peace. He's going to offer it from the herd, whether it's a male or female.
Interesting. Yeah, it could be female.
Yeah.
On this one.
And so we see this peace offering given, and there's some more instructions about, how it's eaten and stuff. But yeah, peace offering. Yeah,
important. Don't leave any of it left over to morning. You're supposed to like enjoy it like that.
Yeah.
That day. Yeah. Number 4, sin offering, an atonement for unintentional sin. And I bet people just had widely different, like, people that are like really, or like, I might have sinned my sins. Some people are like, cleansing from unintentional sins and restoring the relationship with God. Leviticus 4 talks about if a person sins unintentionally in any of the things which the Lord has commanded, which if you've read Leviticus or Deuteronomy, a lot of things, if you commit any sin, if the anointed priest sins to bring guilt on the people, then you need to offer the Lord. This time it's a bull without defect as a sin offering for the sin which he has committed. I think it's interesting, male without defect for this offering could be male or female. This one, it's got to be a bull, like looking at the differences.
Yeah, that is interesting. So just kind of recap. We have this burnt offering, and I think that's probably just for general, hey, we're separated from you. And now we have what you just went over, a sin offering, and that's for unintentional sin. And now we have a guilt offering, and it's really kind of for intentional sin, like restitution and purification. It's atonement for specific transgression. And transgression is a sin where you knew you're sinning.
Yeah.
You stepped over the line on purpose. If a person acts unfaithfully and sins unintentionally against the Lord's holy things, then he shall bring his guilt offering to the Lord. And this time it's a ram without defect from the flock, according to you. So you would go, you could see, Tom.
Got the ram out.
Oh, Tom's bringing a ram, not a bull. Did it on purpose.
Busted. And then the kicker on here is you got that 20% vig you basically got to pay. Like, I'm making restitution. Here's my ram plus 20% more than what I did.
No, that's good. So guilt offering.
Number 6, free will and vow offerings. I'll just make this note too. This is where we start. We're still in Leviticus, but before it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is Leviticus 22. Yeah. So we're a little bit different part of Scripture. This was a voluntary expression of devotion or fulfillment of vows. In Leviticus 22, it says, "Speak to Aaron and to his sons and to all the sons of Israel, and say to them, any man of the house of Israel or the aliens in Israel who present his offering, whether it's of their motive or any of the free will offerings, then they present to the Lord a burnt offering." So you kind of want to go not above and beyond, but you're like, hey, I just want to express I love you, God, here, or fulfillment of vows. I'm going to do this free will offering.
All right, number 7, first fruits offering. We kind of mentioned this earlier because we're going to tithe off of all of our fruits, but we're also going to give from our first fruits. It's acknowledgement of God's provision and like you're trusting. Like you'd be so easy. Like we got our first crop in. We'd like to, it could rain.
Yeah.
Your other crop could get spoiled out there. You could have locusts come out here, but you're going to give that first fruit back to God. And this is in Exodus 23:19. You shall bring the choice first fruits of your soil unto the house of the Lord your God. You're not to boil a young goat in the milk of its mother. Just add on there,
Yeah. There you go.
And then it's mentioned again in Deuteronomy.
But goat is so good when you boil it in its mother's milk. Am I right?
I don't know. Never tried it. If you want to look more at this, Deuteronomy 26:1-10, a longer passage that deals with this first fruit offerings.
Offering number 8, drink offerings. This is a supplementary offering. It can go oftentimes along with these other sacrifices. We read about this sacrifice specifically in Numbers 15, verses 5-10. It talks about preparing the wine, the drink offering. You take a fourth of hin with the burnt offering, so you can see another offering is included here, or for the sacrifice for each lamb, or for a ram. And it kind of goes through the different ways you can use this with a peace offering, however you want to. It's just kind of one of those over the top, got the drink offering going.
I don't mean to. I'm just thinking through practical stuff here.
Yeah.
Because I've watched a lot of cooking, and if you braise meat on like a metal thing, oftentimes they deglaze the pan with alcohol, and it gets that stuff off. And like some of this is an offering to the Lord, but then the priests are going to eat this food that's offered. And, you just think about the practical things that maybe God had in mind.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, how it all kind of works out.
All right, the heave and wave offerings, these are pretty self-explanatory. Everyone knows what the heave and wave offerings are. We probably don't even need to talk about it.
Just skip it. Yeah,
but these portions of the offering presented to the Lord and then to the priest, you shall this is Exodus 29:27, you shall consecrate the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of the heave offering, which was raised, of the ram of ordination, of that which was for Aaron, of that which was for his son. So I don't know exactly what's going on here, but basically you would wave something or you would heave it up like in celebration or something, and it was to be given as an offering. So
heave and wave. We should bring that to the offering plate. Just, wave that money around.
Heave it up.
That's great. So you've got in this notes here, it's pretty nice, the different contexts, different contents. What kind of things were you sacrificing?
Yeah.
Animals, obviously. And, certain times it's, certain specific parts of the animal, like the thigh or whatever it might be. Portions of grain offerings. We got produce. We got first fruits. We have drink offering on there. We also see in Exodus 25, you're bringing silver and gold, specifically when they're building the tabernacle and stuff. They're using a lot of that.
Yeah. So if you tally all that up, the tithes and the offerings over a 7-year period, counting that 7th year Sabbath, you're looking at somewhere up tithing around 20% of everything you have.
Yeah.
Offering, and this was calculated based on a middle of the road, not overly generous person, around 5 to 7%. It could be more if you were generous. So you're tithing around 25 to 27%, which is about what I think close to a normal American's taxes. I don't know.
Yeah, speak for yourself. I know you. I try to circumvent all the loopholes. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So, there's not. It's funny in the tithe code. There's not a lot of loopholes here. You can't be like, I'm going to write this one off.
Right. Well, I mean, they get punished because they start ignoring this, right? And they don't give the land its Sabbath rest or the year jubilee and stuff. So I think that's a good Old Testament picture of the tithes and offering.
That's good.
It wasn't just 10%. Right. Yeah. It was more than that, and there was a system to it. So there you go. Anything else you want to add?
I love it. I think it's good because we read about these things a lot. I like kind of trying to pinpoint like what would this look like, and I think that is good. It's significant, but it's not unlike probably what just in a different form. It takes probably a lot more time and commitment, and it's like I'm not just going to TurboTax once a year, but you're like doing these things, as part of your everyday tied up with your finances. But that's good. And so we can see, this is what we see in the New Testament, people bring in their animals and first fruits and all of this, but these principles. So I like that. I'm looking forward to the giving and seeing, what words are used, how do they connect? Like, are we picking up on these allusions? Are we going different direction? Like how that fits. So I got nothing else.
Yeah, only thing I was going to say, oftentimes when God is talking about, be careful getting a king because the king is going to take an additional 10% basically. So you take that on top of that. Now you're talking like 35, 40% of your income, about 30 of it going to support the Levitical priesthood, 10% to support the king and his armies and stuff.
Yeah.
It starts to add up.
It starts to add up. That's a really good point. So is the giving one will be the next one in our finance part.
The New Testament. New Testament. What New Testament giving looks like.
Great. I can't wait.
That's our take.
Thanks for listening to Take 2. Find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube for those who want to watch our videocast.